whether one is looking at the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, for instance, one would recognize that, yes, indeed, the UN has a role to play there, but ultimately, the primary responsibility of providing security for citizens and people who live within national boundaries of states rests with the states.
South Africa is a harsh place for us. We have been killed, we have been kidnapped, we have been raped, we have been denied all chances to live as human beings.
We are hopeless regarding the situations which we are going on, which is going on in this camp in South Africa.
Where is the world even? Where is the world? Where is the international community?
The UN is not a world government per se. You know, I mean, there's a notion that the UN is some entity that is abstract there, you know. The UN has had credibility because it's been able to maintain its independence and negotiate the differences among the various interests. But it is right to say that unless the member states give the support to the collective, you know, will to promote the collective principles that are embedded in the UN Charter, which is to promote international peace and security, within which human rights becomes an important element, the UN cannot be effective in doing that. The opening lines of the UN Charter speaks about we the peoples, which means collectively as humanity, we decided to come together in the aftermath of the Second World War to establish an intergovernmental organization which is based on member states where we can discuss problems that are common to humanity.
We are saying, please, United Nations High Commission for Refugees in South Africa have done nothing, have abandoned, have went away from their responsibility.
Well, the UN did the best it could under the circumstances during the xenophobic attacks. Now, of course, in hindsight, one can always say more could have been done, more should have been done. But at least we know there are a number of UN agencies that were mobilized, you know, the UN Refugee Agency in particular, you know, that went to assist some of the people who were displaced. There were a lot of meetings, obviously, between UN agencies and the relevant authorities, South African authorities, to begin to look at issues around, reforming policies around migration and protection of refugees and vulnerable people. So in that sense, you know, the UN did the best it could. Could it have done better? Of course.
South African people don't want foreigners to be in this country.
What we cannot do is to condone this notion of impunity. The UN is very clear about not condoning impunity. In other words, people should not just commit human rights violations and let go for the sake of, you know, easy political compromises and so forth. The UN Charter is very clear in emphasizing that we, the peoples, we do whatever it takes to ensure that we resolve our differences in a peaceful manner so that we can coexist. There have been criticisms, you know, about lack of response in certain quarters on the part of those UN agencies. My own view is not to necessarily say, well, just shut them up and, you know, bring something completely new. I think there is a need to go back and reevaluate what did those agencies do in fulfilling their mandate and try to correct the gaps, you know. But ultimately, we are going to need a UN presence, you know, increasingly as the world becomes more and more volatile, as the issues that bind us as humanity become more complex, but also as we become more and more interdependent. Moving forward, obviously, the UN itself needs to reform. The former Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan, championed the whole notion of reforming the UN. His argument was that for an organization that has been established for about 6 decades, it did not make sense to maintain the same kind of structures that were in place 6 decades ago. The organization needs to be reformed in a way that it reflects the democracy that the UN has come to embody.